Last time on Vaguely Scientific.
Look out, Derek, that clearly evil meteor is headed straight for you.
Oh no, we're narrowly escaping complete annihilation at the hands of a planet-destroying alien from across the galaxy. That sure was a close call we had in that intro segment, but fortunately, I'm still Derek. And Jim managed to survive that calamity as well. Hi, Jim.
Duck and cover, everyone.
And our guest this week marched straight up to that evil meteor and punched it right in the face. So thanks for that. Welcome back, Andy.
Hello.
Konnichiwa, humans.
Hooray.
That reminds me of a commercial from the Discovery Channel that had these meteors that were talking in a very monotone voice about Discovery.com. And I will send that video to you later.
This is a show where we answer the most ludicrous audience-submitted questions in a manner that we like to call vaguely scientific. But before we do that, it's time for the fun science fact of the day. Jim?
Okay. I don't know how I ended up looking this up, but I just got really curious. I found out modern facial tissue was invented in 1924 by Kimberly Clark, and they marketed it as Kleenex. So the first modern facial tissue brand was Kleenex, but people in Japan have been using paper as sort of facial tissue / disposable handkerchiefs for centuries. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's really interesting that everyone calls them Kleenexes and not actual facial tissues.
Yeah.
No matter what the brand, everyone calls them Kleenex.
That's what happens when
dominating
you're first.
the market.
Yeah, that's how you win.
Yeah.
I also think it's kind of funny that it's almost the 100-year anniversary.
Oh, yeah, 1924, you said.
Yeah. Apparently, they initially had made them as they were designed to sort of allow you to wipe cold cream on and off your face without getting your hands messy. But now we just blow our noses with them.
Yeah. It's because they break down in water or they don't break down in water.
Yeah.
That's why they're used for that. Well, I just wanted to bring up that this kind of reminded me of an episode of Red Dwarf, which was an old British sitcom about people in space 3 million years in the future. One of the jokes that they make is there's a product called a tension sheet, which people deal with when they're stressed, and it's basically bubble wrap. And they make a joke that like one of the kids that one of the characters went to school with became the richest person on Earth because he rebranded bubble wrap as a stress reliever. And, yeah, that's what that reminded me of. It's just paper. Well, should we move on to our first question then?
I think so.
All right, question 1 this week. In terms of cybernetics and biotics, what would you have implemented and how would you use it to improve or change your life?
Well, let me tell you, my back hurts. And I would just get a cyberized spinal column, or not even just the bones and the muscles. Just like fix that whole situation so that my back doesn't hurt. And then my posture's better. Like my posture is so bad. But if I had like a robot spine that just auto postured me all day, every day, I'd be like, great, this is perfect.
Makes sense.
Nice. I was going to say, I have pretty good posture, so I never really thought about a cybernetic backbone. But what was funny is I asked my kids this question, but in separate times. And my oldest daughter, she said legs. She's like, I think it'd be cool to be able to run faster and jump higher and not run out of energy. I could just keep going and going and going. And then I asked my son, and he said the same thing. He's like, I want legs so I could run fast and jump really high and never get tired.
Mm-hmm. And
then my 8-year-old, I asked her, and she's like, I think God made me just the way I am, so I'm good. I was like, so I had to put her into a situation where I said, okay, so say you're in an accident and you lose a part of your body and you have to have it replaced with the robot body. She's like, oh man. She's like, there's so many options. I was like, yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Like that you're tricking her into answering the question the way you want her to.
Yeah.
That was interesting that the two of them went straight to legs. Like,
Yeah.
That's surprising.
I almost went straight to legs, but I was like, everyone's going to say legs, so I'm not going to do that one.
Right.
I wasn't going to say legs. The first thing I said was I would replace my eyes with perfect, better, not astigmatized eyes.
There you go.
Yeah, I have to wear glasses now. And before we started recording, I was like 3 minutes late because I had to find my glasses because I set them down somewhere in my house, out of reach of my now crawling and starting to try to walk child. And he's very good at getting glasses, and I had to put them somewhere, and I couldn't find them.
He's very good at getting glasses.
If I had robot eyes. Oh yeah, it's wild because I'll pick them up and. In it might be the Karate Kid where like he snaps out and grabs something out of midair. Is that the Karate Kid?
Yeah, with the chopstick, catching the fly.
That's what my son does to my glasses, except with his hand. He's like, doop, and gets them.
Or Kung Fu, can you take these glasses from the palm of my hand?
Yeah.
And that's mine too, is eyes. I've always wanted eyes. But that's the thing is I have great eyesight. I have 20/20 vision, so I don't really need eyes.
Right.
But I want a heads up display. I want to be able I want to see my screen in front of me, I want to be able to drive a GPS and see the direction right in front of me with the lines being put on the road.
You want like Iron Man augmented reality.
I want that built into my head. I honestly don't think we're too far from that. I mean, they're trying to make this stuff already, but
oh yeah. Like Google Glass 2 is going to be really off the chain.
That's what we hope for, right?
It's interesting that we, at least Jim and I, started with correcting things that aren't working properly.
Right. Did either of you ever see any of the later Star Trek Next Generation movies?
No.
So, what's his name? LeVar Burton. He was really, really tired of wearing that stupid Geordi LaForge visor. And so, starting in Star Trek First Contact, he just had, like, robot eyes. And he could see in infrared and ultraviolet. I was like, I want to have infrared vision, like switch on infrared and be able to see heat or something like that. That would be cool.
Yeah.
There is an early episode where the Q shows up and is like, Geordi, I can make your vision work. And for that entire episode, LeVar Burton's character, like LeVar Burton doesn't have to wear the thing and he can see. And like at the end of the episode, for some reason, he has to give it up. And like Picard's like, are you sure you want to give up this gift? And he's like, nah, I'll take the sacrifice. It was worth it to be able to see for an entire day or something like that.
Probably didn't want to be beholden to Q because that's never a good idea.
I mean, that's what it boiled down to. But it was like, I know they've played with his vision a lot, and I'm pretty sure it was always LeVar Burton could not actually see when he had that on front of him. On his face.
Ironically.
That's a bummer.
Well, I wanted to say my next, right off the bat, when I read this question, I had two. And the first one was the eyes. And the second one, I was like, well, if I can like genetically modify my body or something, I think it would be neat to have, in addition to lungs, also gills.
Oh.
And being able to just be amphibious.
Mm-hmm. Robot lung
awesome.
Gills.
I mean, that's not realistic in the least, but like, I don't care.
Honestly, that's probably more realistic than a lot of our other things we're looking at.
I don't know if it's unrealistic because like we have machinery, I don't know to what capacity it can produce like oxygen from seawater, but we have that ability. I don't know like how fast it can do it if it's fast enough that like a human could breathe the oxygen. But
I think one of the issues with, because like even bigger animals like lobsters and stuff need to have like book lungs.
Yeah.
And like the bigger you get, the more oxygen you need. So I don't know.
A long time ago, didn't we talk about like I maybe this was with Jonathan. We talked about that was the episode with Batman stuff. We talked about Batman and like with a diving suit that he has that takes the air out of the water. Yeah. And I think that you had mentioned that exists, but it's thousands of dollars and weighs many, many, many pounds.
Yeah, it's called a rebreather, and it's actually like really dangerous if you don't know what you're doing because it has to like function just right.
So maybe don't put one of those in your body, as it turns out. That was a long walk for a bad idea.
Unless we perfect the technology, but that's okay.
Right. Well, I imagine that most people's thoughts on cybernetics is the goal of immortality. You know, and I've never really thought of it as that way, but I think that's what most people think of is how can we change our bodies to survive and live on forever? You know, like the lady in Doctor Who, that's just basically a giant piece of skin face.
Oh, yeah, forever. I remember that.
But hopefully it's a little bit better than that, and we can actually walk around. You know, I say give me 50 years. If I can live 50 more years, I might be able to live forever.
Yeah.
You know? But myself, I'm pretty healthy. I'm strong. I don't really need arms or legs or body parts, but I would gladly sever my arm to have a cybernetic one that is able to, you know, like Inspector Gadget, have a fork in it or a lighter, you know, just to have a lighter in your thumb, even though I don't smoke and I never will, but to be able to have a lighter in your thumb, which just sounds like the coolest thing ever.
That is so interesting that you said literally that, because I wrote down a lot of these things. It would really depend on what the process of augmentation is, because like I could see thinking like a robot computer arm with a grappling hook on it would be really cool. But like, I personally would not have my arm amputated specifically to do that. And then I also wrote maybe someone else would. And you,
maybe someone else would amputate it for me and it would all work out.
Yeah. I'll gladly be the one to do test trials on.
I wanted to mention, I looked at cyberpunk, like the genre, not the specific franchise of cyberpunk, but in a lot of like cyberpunk stories, the idea of body modification and having like cyborg parts is portrayed as being like really common, and it's seen as similar to like in modern day we have people getting tattoos and piercings.
Right. Yeah.
But generally in cyberpunk themes, they go so far as to say pretty much everyone, like it's been normalized so much that pretty much everyone has some form of cybernetics built into them.
Oh.
I wanted to kind of pose this question to both of you, because even now, while things like tattoos and gauges in your ears are getting more common, there are still like a lot of people that don't like those things. And I think it's more believable that eventually society will think that that's just kind of normal. But what I find hard to believe is that there won't be anybody in the world that is like, nah, I don't want to alter my body.
Right.
Because like right now, like earrings, for example, are super common. But I know tons of people who are like, I am not interested in poking a hole in my ear.
Yeah.
So I guess, do you think that in the future we'll ever get to a point where like just it's pretty normal to have a robot arm?
I think the younger people that are born into it will absolutely accept it. But our people right now, I think the people in our age group would gladly accept this stuff. But my parents would. No, I'm not going to do that.
I feel like it's possible that we would see more of an external modification. I don't know that people are going to be like gladly chopping off parts of their own body to replace them, but I could see them having external wearables or like maybe power armor. Instead of, cutting off your arm and making it a robot arm, you just have an arm exoskeleton that you put your regular arm into and do cool stuff with.
Right. And that's kind of where we are right now. I mean, we have internal cybernetics already. I mean, we're building lungs, we're building hearts. We tried giving someone a genetically altered pig heart that lasted for 6 months or whatever. But still, it's amazing what we're able to do. Even these bodysuits that they have that make people stronger, that you get to put your arm into and your body into, and it increases your strength, It's not the level of like Batman suit that you put it on, but it could get there someday.
Someday somebody is going to 3D print an Iron Man suit that actually does Iron Man stuff.
That actually does Iron Man stuff. Andy, the case about your daughter is interesting too, because like if you had to, like if say you were in some sort of accident and you had to have a body part replaced, then like absolutely I want the most advanced piece of technology I can possibly get, because the closer you can get to it feeling like just having your arm back, right, I think is what I would want.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I find interesting is any shows or video games, it's so funny that I think they feel like they have this down right because of what we should expect. Because first it's going to be expected of what can you afford to replace your body part with, first of all, and will your body accept it, you know? And that's a big thing in video games and movies is once you get this arm, how long will your body be able to handle it before it rejects this thing being connected to your nervous system and your brain?
Right.
And what kind of problems that's going to be. And that could, I mean, we can talk about this for hours probably and possibilities, but it's just interesting that these ideas that we've come up with years ago are now coming into a possibility of existence. And will it happen the way they've always imagined it, you know?
Yeah.
Here's my issue with cybernetic eyes, though. So I have cybernetic eyes. How many ads am I going to have to put up with constantly popping up in my eyesight that I can't stop without paying to stop them?
Yeah.
Am I going to have to pay a subscription-based system to have my cybernetic eyes? And if I don't pay it, the loan sharks are going to come take my eyes?
Because like Batman and Iron Man, who both have done that, like AR stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they build that stuff themselves.
Right.
And if we're doing it in such a way, like in real life and people are getting eye transplants and stuff, that's going to have to come through like
you just got to jailbreak your eyes.
Yeah. Right. You got to, yep.
That might be the episode title.
Buy them on the black market.
Jailbreak your eyes. Yeah, there you go.
So the last thing I wanted to mention is I feel like the eye conversation took such a hard turn away from what I was thinking that it kind of almost invalidates what I was going to mention. But I was thinking of like having just one little extra little chip in my brain that I can use to remember like appointments and calendar dates and stuff.
That'd be amazing.
Instead of having to write it down or put it in my phone, it's just like, oh, I remember I have a doctor's appointment on Thursday.
Yeah. If you look at my calendar, my phone, every day, I mean, all throughout the day, I have to update my reminders constantly. I put them in my calendar, so they go off at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
I had like 50 reminders the other day of things I needed to remember to do when I got home. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this.
I have a weird version of that problem where I actually tend to be really good at remembering my entire schedule for like at least up to a month. But I will like go to sleep at night and think I'm worried that I'm going to forget this thing. And it isn't until I program it into my phone that I relax and say, even if I forget it, I'll be reminded. But then I never forget it. So like, why am I stressed out about that? I don't know.
Yeah, I probably wake up after I lay down for bed maybe 5 times to put reminders in my phone for the next day. Because again, like this, being a part of this, like I'm not going to forget this. But I'm scared that I'm going to forget it because I know I will. And it hit 6:30 and I was like, oh crap, I'm doing a whole bunch of other stuff and I'm supposed to be getting ready for Vaguely Scientific. And I almost did forget it. And sure enough, my phone went off right then. I was like, hey, you got this appointment.
I had a doctor's appointment today, in fact, and I had the little reminder card and I looked at it like a good 6 or 7 times throughout the day, even though in my brain I was like, I know what time this appointment is going to be. I don't have to look at it to confirm that because I've already looked at it like 60 times.
Oh, I've got terrible memory. So yes, a memory chip would be fantastic, Jim.
So you want kind of like a personal assistant computer built into your...
Although if it was built into my eyeballs as well, that's fine too, because then it could give me the cool HUD.
We just want the HUD.
That would be cool. And even to have something implanted into like the bone of your ear, which they already kind of have similar stuff, cochlear implants and whatnot to help people hear, but to put something in there that could be a personal assistant. Like, how have we not had a good personal assistant? Like, we have Siri and we got Alexa and Google, whatever, but like, they all kind of suck. Like, when is my assistant going to ask me how I'm doing? When's it going to say good morning to me without me starting a conversation? Hey, how you doing? Anything I can do for you?
I don't use my assistant like
Nobody
the
does.
Google thing. I just punch it into the actual calendar,
Right.
and then it will remind me on my phone. But I find that unless I have a specific thing like at a specific time where I'm like, I need to remember, when I walk in the front door this afternoon to, I don't know, load the dishwasher or whatever, I will say, program that into my assistant, and then they will chirp at me. But it doesn't start a conversation. You're right. It is so unpersonable.
I want it to ask me how I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like the day it asks me how I'm doing, I'll be like, okay, that's cool.
We grew up watching the Jetsons, and we expect Rosie the robot to walk in the living room when I get home.
We just want robot butlers. Come on.
Yeah, that's what drives me crazy. Is like people are building these AI and these robots. It's like, okay, first get down the AI right, where it's going to like be more personal, more human. But instead we go straight for the robotic part of it.
Yeah.
And I want a good AI to talk to. Like Jarvis. Like everyone wants a Jarvis.
Yeah. I absolutely want Paul Bettany to chat to me in his perfect British accent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find it awesome that like Microsoft took on the brand of Cortana for their system, that they took it straight from Halo and put it into their computer system. But again, she doesn't ask me how I'm doing either.
No.
She all she cares about is the Master Chief.
I forgot that was a thing.
Well, we took a turn from cybernetics to AI and robotics. So.
That's okay. We have to move on anyway, so...
Ah, yes. So, it is April, and this all happened in September, and I forgot. My bad. It's been a busy year. I had a child. So, we like to try to keep on top of the Ig Nobel Prizes. And they usually happen in September. And like I said, I forgot. So, we are going to talk a little bit about the 2021 Ig Nobel Prizes. These are given to scientific research that is offbeat, a little bit strange, and on the surface seems functionally useless, but usually has some kind of like deeper, like if you actually read the papers, there's actually a reason they do these things, but they all sound a little bit ridiculous. So, we're going to go through our list and take a look at the 2021 winners. Our first prize here is the Biology Prize, and this was awarded to Suzanne Schultz, Robert Elkind, and Juice Van de Viger. Wow. Sorry, man. And they analyzed variations in purring, chirping, chattering, trilling, tweedling, murmuring, meowing, moaning, squeaking, hissing, yowling, howling, growling, and other modes of cat-human communication.
Interesting.
Cat-human?
Trying to cat to human.
Yeah. Or human to cat.
Interesting.
I didn't actually read if it was cat to human or human to cat, but either way.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. My phone keeps on advertising me videos of barking cats, and I can't help but watch it to see how's this cat going to sound like when it barks. And it's always like, it's not like a bark. It's like I don't know. Cats are weird.
Yeah. So the next one is our Ecology Prize, and this was presented to Leila Santeri et al. For using genetic analysis to identify the different species of bacteria that reside in wads of discarded chewing gum on pavements in various countries.
Genius.
I love how that doesn't sound at all like a massive waste of time.
Yeah. I'm very interested in that, actually, because we've learned in the last 5 or 10 years that, like, basically every individual person is an entire different planet of bacteria that are not always even remotely related. It's kind of wild.
Well, I'm interested to see like if the bacteria on American discarded chewing bubble gum is different than like say the Swedish bacteria on chewing
I want to
gum.
know how old this chewing gum is, because if there's bacteria that's just like still surviving and like festering in it,
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of just being a piece of rubber.
Yeah. The Chemistry Prize went to Jorg Wicker et al. For chemically analyzing the air inside movie theaters to test whether the odors produced by an audience reliably indicates the levels of violence, sex, antisocial behavior, drug use, and bad language in the movie the audience is watching.
That's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool.
Because people give off different fumes, and I mean, we all
there's
know
like
about
the stress sweat
pheromones
versus the hot sweat and stuff like that.
For movies which are specifically designed to like evoke emotion. That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that.
The economics prize went to Pavlo Blavatsky for discovering that the obesity of a country's politicians may be a good indicator for that country's corruption.
And well, that's a little on the nose and kind of obvious, but yeah, makes sense.
Somebody needed to point it out.
Somebody had to do a scientific research paper on it because, I mean, we all know, but you have to test it against the null hypothesis.
Yeah.
The medicine prize goes to Olkay Sembulot, Bullet, for demonstrating that orgasms can be as effective as decongesting medicines at improving nasal breathing.
Oh man, I could have won that prize because I knew that that's essentially how a sneeze works.
Huh. Well, you should have wrote a paper about it.
Your body is doing the same thing. It's a sudden contraction of all the muscles in your body.
Well, you should have wrote a paper about it.
Sneezing hurts, though.
This is why the Ig Nobel Prize is important, because you look at this and you're like, I can be a scientist. Come on.
Well, yeah, this stuff is so much more interesting than what they give actual Nobel Prizes for.
Right?
Nobody cares about the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, it's like, sure, you fed a bunch of kids in Africa, but look what we did.
Yeah.
We're studying discarded chewing gum.
Speaking of the Peace Prize this year went to Ethan Becerris, Stephen Nailway, and David Carrier for testing the hypothesis that humans evolved beards to protect themselves from punches in the face.
I would have...
It took 3 guys to do this. Now, did these 3 guys grow beards and punch each other in the face to see if it...
No, I didn't actually read how they did it, but my favorite part of this actually is that they didn't prove that this was a thing that did happen. This was that they tested this hypothesis and found that it is plausible. It's not that they said, oh yeah, it's definitely this. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? This could actually be a thing. And that's my favorite part of this.
That's a really hard sell for me, but okay.
I wish I could grow a beard.
The physics prize goes to Alessandro Corbetta et al. For conducting experiments to learn why pedestrians do not constantly collide with other pedestrians.
Because of all the senses that they have.
Speaking of which, the kinetics prize goes to Hisashi Murakami et al. For conducting experiments to learn why pedestrians do sometimes collide with other pedestrians.
Were these competing?
Not that I know of. I choose to believe that neither had any idea that the other experiment was happening.
Well, his isn't as much of a study as it is just people watching and realizing, oh, that person's on their phone. They're going to run into that person on their phone. Oh, yes!
The entomology prize goes to John Mulrenan Jr. et al. For their research study, a new method of cockroach control on submarines.
Did they find anything? Or?
I've been in a retired submarine before, and based on how they store food and stuff, I could believe cockroaches could become a problem very quickly.
Oh, okay. There were a couple different ways I was wondering about interpreting that, like controlling cockroaches on submarines, or like keeping cockroaches off of submarines.
Well, cockroaches like to quickly destroy electronics. Yeah. So a submarine is ran completely by electronics. So it'd be a real bummer.
I was thinking how remote control of cockroaches and specifically putting them on submarines.
And finally, our transportation prize goes to Robin Radcliffe et al. For determining by experiment whether it's safer to transport an airborne rhinoceros upside down.
Well, transporting an airborne rhinoceros upside down. So grabbing it by its hind legs instead of its front legs?
I would imagine this has something to do with a sky crane and whether or not it's harnessed upright or...
I remember a very long time ago, we were talking with Allie about how we transport giraffes. And I'm not actually sure any of that ended up in the episode because it was kind of a tangent, but we did figure out they were transported by helicopters.
Yeah. It was by helicopter. Well, it was inspired by our conversation of Operation Dumbo Drop.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was back in the beginning.
Well, congratulations to all the winners. You did a good job.
Yay.
Good job.
I love the Ig Nobel Prize.
It's great. Well, we have another question to discuss and answer this week. Question 2 this week comes to us from Kristen. The planet Namek has 3 suns. How do?
How do indeed. Well, the thing that I found it most interesting about this is that the planet Namek has 3 suns, and they say it's always daytime on Namek, but if you look at depictions of it in the anime, I actually don't know about the manga, I have not looked at the manga, but the pictures on all of these different Dragon Ball wikis that I looked at, of which there are many, all of them show that Namek has a nighttime side. So that's a weird thing to claim.
Okay, explain to me what is Namek. I saw this question and I was like, that sounds like something I should know, but I don't think I do.
Yeah, for listeners who don't know, Namek is a planet from Dragon Ball Z, and there's not really a whole lot you need to know about it because this is basically just an astronomy question.
Yeah. Oh, it's worth mentioning Namek isn't there anymore.
That's true. That's true. It blows up.
The bad guy Frieza blew it up.
No.
So it's a planet where the Dragon Ball Z characters went
and blew it up
and got it blown up.
Yeah.
Okay. In that situation, in that case, like Dragon Ball Z doesn't matter. We're imagining a planet with 3 suns. Do we have any planets in our system, our real system that we know of that has more than 1 sun, 2 suns, 3 suns?
We do, actually.
Yeah.
And how does that work? Like, does our planet rotate around both those suns? Or is like there one behind it that rotates farther out from the center sun?
Yeah, actually, so in a lot of the cases we've seen, there are 2 stars kind of in the middle of the system that orbit around each other. They sort of orbit around their common center of gravity. And then the planets further out orbit around that center of gravity, not like 1 or 2 specific stars.
Okay, so the two suns in the middle are actually rotating around a center? Like not one of those suns is rotating around the other sun?
Yeah, actually we see that with
cool.
Pluto and its largest moon, Charon. Charon? It's that one.
One of those.
Yeah.
So Pluto doesn't rotate. It has 3 axes that it's rotating on.
Basically, yeah, because it's rotating around the sun, and it's also rotating around its own moon. It's the moon and Pluto's center of gravity is not too far outside of Pluto, but they do dance around each other. It's kind of neat.
That's kind of cool.
But yeah, we see that with stars. We've seen that with planets and moons. We've seen that with Pluto and Charon. But the other thing you said though is actually true. We often see systems where you have one really, really big star in the center, and then there might be a smaller star further out that's like a red dwarf that's small enough that it just orbits around the bigger star as if it was a planet orbiting instead of another star. Because red dwarfs are actually quite small.
Wasn't there a movie that depicted Jupiter being...
Oh, you know what I bet you're thinking of is the 2001 book series is eventually the aliens that build the monoliths actually turn Jupiter into a star. And this is in 2010, the year we make contact. But the thing about that is that they I guess they compress Jupiter until it just ignites. But Jupiter itself is actually much too small to be a star. In fact, it's actually too small to even be considered a brown dwarf. I think, and someone's going to have to look this up at some point. Hey, we could look it up and get it wrong now and look it up later. But I think that the cutoff for the lowest mass star you can have is like 80 Jupiter masses. Like 13 Jupiter masses will get you to brown dwarf, and then 80 will get you to actually being a star. It's something like that.
That still just blows my mind when I look at the size of stars.
Yeah.
That's just insane.
So brown dwarfs are like the Pluto of stars.
Yeah. They're like kind of the in-betweeny bit between planet and star. Just like dwarf planet is like the in-betweeny bit between asteroid and planet.
Yeah.
Now, because of Jupiter being turned into another star, wouldn't the Earth have, like, if it's having suns on both sides of it, at times of the year, wouldn't the Earth have, like, times of no nighttime?
Yeah, actually, that's something that I think is eventually addressed in the books. It's been a very long time since I've read these. I will say 2010 is the best one. Mm-hmm. So that's that. That's all I have to say about the series. But yeah, you're right. I mean, at some points at the of the orbit, we do get like a solid chunk of just no nighttime.
So in that scenario where like Jupiter is in the same solar system as Earth and is now a sun, or is now a star, right? So it would still be revolving around our sun because our sun's gravitational pull basically overpowers that, right?
Right. You know, something they never addressed in that book is like, that would really mess up plants.
That's what I was thinking.
That's what I was thinking. It's like, wouldn't the Earth have like a kind of a extreme climate change at that point?
Yeah.
Like an extreme
plants would be so
change.
confused, and like animals that are supposed to use like the day-night cycle to hibernate or migrate would just not.
Humans would be miserable because we love sleeping.
Yeah.
We need a day-night cycle.
They never address just how bad for like all of the life on planet Earth, except for like deep ocean stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
Arthur C. Clarke, I expected better of you.
Well, there's a couple other things I wanted to bring up just because the idea of having 3 suns seems to be such a bizarre concept for people. And as a matter of fact, when I looked this up, one of the first things I saw was mention of Tatooine. Tatooine has 2 suns, and a lot of people were like saying that's a planet can't have 2 suns, but that's actually really by far not the most outrageous thing about Tatooine.
Not to derail you too much, because I do want to talk about that, but I seem to recall that one of the very first, if not the first set of exoplanets we discovered was around a pulsar. So if you could put a planet around a pulsar, I think you could put planets around 2 suns. And we found that already, but like... Jim,
I'm going to ask you a question. Mm-hmm. What's a pulsar?
It is a supernova remnant. So the implication would have to be that the planets probably formed after the supernova, because the supernova probably would destroy the planets. But that's a weird thing to see. You wouldn't expect that. I wouldn't want to be there either, because pulsars are extremely radioactive. But Tatooine's interesting too, though, because Tatooine does have a day-night cycle. So in my head, I would think, okay, well, Tatooine probably orbits around those 2 suns, around their common center of gravity. And in the sky, when they're setting in that famous scene, they are pretty close together in the sky. So I would think that's probably the case.
Yeah, Tatooine, there's always one sun that's bigger than the other. And typically a different tint. One's always more red, while the other one's more of a yellowish white. So I don't know if that has to do with anything, but being a Star Wars geek, that's stuff I know.
Yeah. I mean, if one of them's like a red dwarf or a red giant, I suppose, and then you have more like a yellow, a common sun-like star.
Right.
So a couple non-astronomical things, because when Jim's around, I don't bother looking up astronomy. But some other weird things about the planet Namek specifically are that, and this is an artistic choice, but the sky of Namek is green, whereas the plant life is blue.
Huh.
Which is like, obviously supposed to be the opposite of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked up, could a planet have a green sky? And we talked about this before, but the biggest answer to it that I found was that even on Earth, there are times when the sky appears green.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times this is like in storm conditions.
I was going to say, I always heard that if the sky turns green during a thunderstorm, then it's like possibly going to be a tornado. Like not 100% of the time, or even like a lot of the time. Yeah. But like that is indicative that the conditions for a tornado could be ripe.
Yeah. So a sky. So on a planet where like it's always gonna storm, there's like a lot of storms. The sky could always appear green, but it would also be like dimmer, and all the blues on the entire planet would be muted since less blue light is getting through the atmosphere.
Well, that makes sense.
So that kind of like puts a damper on the other thing I looked up, which was like plants appearing blue as opposed to green. And it's a general misconception that like plants that are like, there are plants that aren't green.
Yeah.
And a lot of people sometimes think it's because they don't have chlorophyll, but that's not actually the case. It's just they have like other pigments that kind of overpower the color of chlorophyll.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also some plants that don't have chlorophyll, and they're called heterotrophs. So they don't produce their own food. That translates to like other feeding. So these are plants that like feed on fungi or take nutrients from other plants.
Okay.
But we know that the plants on Namek have to be photosynthetic because Namek's atmosphere has oxygen.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Well, we did discuss that having daytime all the time would make the plants really confused.
Oh,
maybe
that's
they're
true.
just really confused and they're a little sad, so they're blue.
They're just down all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing is that I don't actually know if we ever get really a good look at their stars, but they could also have specific pigments that take advantage of whatever energy the star is giving off, like specific wavelengths. Like our sun gives off a slightly larger amount of green light energy than it does red or blue, and plants actually reflect that green light away, so they get a smaller dose of energy than they would otherwise. Because like if you really wanted to soak up all the sun's energy, you just be a black plant, but that would be terrible because then you get hot and die. So they do want to reflect away some of that energy. But
well, speaking in that manner, aren't colors just light reflecting off of objects into our eyes?
Yes.
So if there's light coming from three directions, maybe all those plants are the same color as our planet, but because light coming in at three different directions and blasting it into our eyes, it just looks a different color.
Oh.
Or maybe the artist just painted them blue.
Yeah. They were like, blue is a good... That way you know it's an alien planet, because they're not green.
Right. They just wanted it to be not Earth, so they swapped the sky and the plant color.
I ran out of all my other colors except blue, so now the plants are blue.
Now the plants are blue.
Maybe it's like how they made the Hulk green. It used to be gray.
Yeah.
They just didn't have green for comics.
That way you know he's radioactive.
You know? Yes. Namek's sky is radioactive.
I was reading about a solar system that we recently discovered. I think it was maybe a year or two ago, where we think there might be planets orbiting around three stars. And this is what is it called? Let me pull my notes up here. Boop. The solar system is called GW Orionis. It's in the Orion Nebula, and it's actually it's a baby solar system. It's got the three stars, and it has a protoplanetary disk. So eventually, this disk is going to turn into planets. But as we've been observing it, we've noticed that there are some gaps in this disk, and the gaps would mean something is probably hoovering up material, accreting into a planet. So even though we can't see it, we can kind of guess there might be a planet in there already that is orbiting around three suns. And they said that the way that everything is working right now is that it's probably going to be a slightly unstable system. So at some point in the future, maybe these planets might get ejected, or one of the stars gets ejected, or something like that. So a system like that may be kind of unstable, but something interesting about the planet Namek is that at some point in its history had some kind of environmental disaster that almost wiped out all the Namekians. So something to think about. Unstable orbits could be the cause.
Well, listeners, let us know, how could we use cybernetics to give our solar system more suns? Jim, do we have any listener mail?
We do. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on Facebook. You can tweet @vaguelysci. You can post on our blog. We got the comments turned on. And this email comes to us from Saber and is in regards to episode 94, Tiny the Big Red Dog. And Saber says, "Dear hosts, thanks again for some great episodes. I wanted to remark on your last episode that involved music being funny without lyrics. I absolutely feel like this has to be a thing, otherwise there are specific instruments that wouldn't exist. Two examples that immediately come to mind are the slide whistle and theremin. They don't sound like typical instruments, and I think that's part of the purpose to them. What else can they make but funny music? And you certainly can't play a slide whistle and sing at the same time."
That's like a harmonica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although harmonicas are not funny.
Harmonicas are great.
Harmonicas can be funny.
Theremins were invented in the...
I think a theremin's creation would have been an accident. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
this could be used for something.
Well, theremin was kind of in this this experimental period, I suppose, where they were like, anything that makes noise must be able to make music, which I agree with.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the beginning of the theremin. And
I always thought they found the theremin in the Roswell crash, and they were like, oh, this is just for alien stuff. So we'll put it in all the alien movies.
It's specifically for aliens.
Yeah.
I would describe theremins as creepy more than funny.
I think that I find them funny, but only in the I think, again, it's context dependent. Like,
true.
I think of old 50s sci-fi movies with aliens that are a little bit cheesy and a little bit hokey, and they tickle me. I guess not like haha funny, but like this is entertaining and comical to me.
Yeah, and then the band Stump would agree with the fact that anything that makes sound could be an instrument.
Yeah.
Let me pound on that.
Yeah.
If it has a tone, it can make a note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have, at work, we do a demonstration that sort of explains how sunquakes make different musical notes. And we have these 4 acrylic tubes, and we spray ethanol into them, and we light them. And because the 4 tubes are 4 different lengths, they make 4 different musical notes. And they're just fire in a plastic tube that is making music, sort of. I think that's kind of funny.
I like it.
Yeah.
Like gas.
I get it. Well, thank you very much for that email. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all the other places cool podcasts hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Especially if they already know but haven't listened yet.
That's a good point, because if they already listen, then I think they already know. Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. A lot of cool stuff on there. It's going to be summer soon. You could get a t-shirt. A t-shirt that says Bigfoot's best friend, so that when you go hiking in the woods, Bigfoot knows you're not a threat and will come up and ask you for some beef jerky.
That is the trick.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to proclaim your love of Bigfoot, and that way Bigfoot knows.
Yeah.
But if you abuse that power and you try to like hunt Bigfoot after he comes out, he'll just break your arm. He's impervious to bullets.
Yeah. Bigfoot keeps seeing these people go out dressed in like forest camo, and it's like, that's going to make him nervous.
Yeah. Makes me nervous. If I see someone in forest camo and I'm in the woods, I'm like, they're going to think I'm a deer. I got to get out of here.
Yeah. Well, thank you to Andy for being our guest this week.
You're welcome.
Yay.
My pleasure.
For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Andy.
Bye, everybody.
Toodaloo.
See ya. Zing.
Next time on Vaguely Scientific.
I was just curious why the planet's called Namek, and thought maybe it was just called Planet K. And then someone said the planet's name is K, and they got mistranslated and called it Namek.
Oh, name K. Yeah.
There's actually probably an interesting answer to that question because
I don't want to know what it is.
If I had to guess based on what I know of Akira Toriyama, I don't think there's an interesting answer to that question.
Well, I mean, it means it's taken from the word namakuji, which means slug in Japanese, and
I am on the fence as to whether or not that is an interesting explanation or just kind of like, oh yeah.
I think it's meta interesting.
It is meta.
It's not. It's not interesting lore wise.
Right. Yes. Correct. Although I like Andy's explanation that they just wrote it as this planet is named K, and they just transcribed it.
This planet needs a name, K.
Oh, okay. I wrote it down.
Okay.
Namek.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a good goof.